So now we have our first panel topic. We're going to talk about CPG industry trends and tactics for brands. We have four great people, and Ted, David, Ju, and Jared. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself for 30 seconds, and Jeffrey is going to be moderating this panel. Ted, do you want to start with you since you're first on the list?
Sure. So yeah, I'm Ted Fleming. I'm the founder and CEO at Partake Brewing. We are makers of some of the world's best craft non-alcoholic beers that are sold across Canada and the US. And not only are they great tasting, but they're as low as 10 calories a can, which is really a key driver for us and helps us play in the health and wellness space.
Awesome. David?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is David. I'm the Associate Director of Entrepreneurship at York University. So what I essentially do is I work with entrepreneurs to help them scale and grow. So we have a food and beverage accelerator. That's a 5-month program that's focused on helping food and beverage companies go into mass retail and understand the process, what it's like, and just get prepared for that. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, David. Ju, and completely tell me if I am pronouncing it incorrectly.
No, it's Ju Young, but Ju is fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thanks for your time. My name is Ju Young. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Suku Vitamins. We offer sugar-free, sugar alcohol-free, plant-based gummy vitamins. We have about 15 products out in the market today. We have a few more coming out next year, and we're available nationally across Canada, regional market in US, and in China, and some other places internationally. Thank you.
Thank you. Jared?
Awesome. So I'm Jared. I'm the president over at the Think Tank. We're a full service communications agency that works with consumer packaged goods brands to help them drive trial, lift sales, and grow baskets in retailers mostly across North America. And I also have a food product myself that just launched August 1st in the nut butter space. We're Wanda Nut Butters. We are internationally spiced nut butter, starting with 2 peanut butters. And happy to be here.
Amazing. Jeffrey, why don't you kick this off?
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, guys. I'm excited to talk to all of you because, well, I know all of you and we have chatted at some capacity over the years through your businesses. And I think the way things are going today, that really the industry is built off trends, and it's really understanding what those tactics are to kind of really push those trends forward. And you guys right here on this panel really talk really strongly to those trends, which start with really pushing non-alcohol, getting into the no sugars, and in the gummy bear side with vitamins. And of course, now Jared talking with your nut butter. I'm excited. I want to try this because I'm a huge fan of Wow Butter and all of these plant-based peanut butters that are out there. So this is amazing. So congrats, and very excited to participate on that side. But all of these pieces all fall into the category of working with the trends and the way the world is operating. And maybe, David, we can start with you. Since you're kind of at the forefront of all of this, you're working with a lot of these startups that are coming into this space. What do you look for, and how do you stay on track of the trends, and what things engage you to work with these companies and bring them in and help accelerate them?
Yeah, no, thank you, JP. I think it's extremely tough. I think to your point, there's always new brands popping up. I find that every time I'm scrolling through Instagram, there's like 5-6 different brands. I'm like, now I want to try it. What is this? And you get into this dark hole and rabbit hole of figuring out what they are. But I think some of the trends that we're seeing, of course, is the no sugar or kind of like the good for you type of stuff. Those are definitely huge trends that we're seeing. More and more plant-based stuff that I see are coming up, and I think it's becoming more normal. I think, we're all used to the impossible meat, the Beyond Burgers and things like that. But now we're seeing more like ground meat. Like we just saw one company that's like a sliced meat, but that's plant-based. So we're starting to see more variety in the alternative meat, which is also fantastic as well. But I think the one trend that I'm seeing is, I would say it's not even the product itself, is that we're seeing our brands are coming out with a messaging and a very concise branding. Like I almost see that a lot of companies are going brand first and saying, how does my brand stand out against all the other competitors or be unique in itself? And they're building this entire story. And recently we had a conversation to had an opportunity to talk to Midday Scores, and they were telling us how they came up with their story and how they were, unapologetic about that we were doing. They built this brand, and it was just such a different approach. And I think we're starting to see more people try to go that route. We always remind companies, hey, there's only one Midday Scores. You got to find your own voice and your own story. But branding is something that I think has become a bigger trend, not more than the product itself, but equally as important as the product, is that they're looking at how are they being packaged, what is their voice, what is their messaging, and how does it come across to consumers, and what are their values? And that's become a big topic, I think.
I love that. And it's so true that brand, and Nicholas talked about how brand played a big part even in the start of his company. And Ted, I think this is something that really kind of resonates in your side of things. You have, and you didn't have to create the story and make it up. You created a storyline based off of where you felt you were back in the day when you started to create this brand. And you really emphasized that and you pushed behind this. And I think 6-7 years ago, there wasn't much going on in the non-alcoholic space. So how did you decide that this was something that you really wanted to get behind? And even though that it was going to be a tough slug, how did you kind of get in there and decide, you know what, I got to build a brand, build a story, and really jump on this? And it wasn't a trend at the time. So you kind of built the trend, if you will.
Yeah, thanks, JP. I was solving a problem, and I was solving a problem that was very important to me on a personal level. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease about 10 years ago, gave up alcohol as part of a shift towards a healthier lifestyle to manage that condition. And I was a craft beer lover. I loved going out and exploring craft beer, socializing with friends. There were so many family events that, you know, a lot of the social aspects of those revolved around sharing a drink. And, you know, I felt disconnected from that when I was going through this. And so, you know, Partake was an answer to my own experience and my own problem. But in chasing that solution, I seem to have solved that problem for tens of thousands and maybe someday millions of other people. And, you know, the brand is very important, and the purpose behind our brand is integral to our messaging today. But the brand didn't start with that in mind. I kind of learned that as I was going on, and the early days, I started to realize, hey, I'm you know, I've got a product here. It's solving a problem, but in solving the problem, I'm creating a community around, you know, like-minded people or people going through the same thing as me. And that message, that authenticity really resonates with people. And so I think you heard with Nicholas, purpose is important. And, you know, you can have a variety of, you know, your purpose doesn't have to be health and wellness and, you know, making alcohol and social drinking easier and more inclusive for people who don't drink or want to drink less. It could be about environment. It could be, I've seen some new products out specific to gut health and microbiome, which for me was someone with an intestinal issue is, you know, that's important. And I'd like to see those brands start from that, you know, that small, very specific problem they're looking to solve and go mainstream from there. And that's what we've experienced. We started with this small niche group, but we are now going mainstream in a big way because there's such a drive towards health and wellness, and people are having a new look at the way alcohol fits in their life and where drinking non-alcoholic products like Partake fit into their lives. And I think there's a recognition with products like ours that, you know, have enhanced the taste and sensory and social experience of not drinking, even when you are drinking. You know, I think it's way easier for people, and we've got this great wave behind us of people looking to moderate and have a healthier relationship with alcohol.
And it's interesting, and you brought up a lot of key points there, having a key problem, having a purpose, building community. And these are all part of that tactics that kind of build and coincide with that trend. And as you mentioned, there wasn't much of a trend back then. You were literally solving a problem, and now the trend's caught up. And now you're allowed to kind of ride that wave because you kind of envisioned that this would come at some point in time, which is amazing. So now taking that and going over to what you've built, Drew, it's very much a similar kind of process. You found a gap, you looked at where it was missing, and you decided, I need to come in here and make a change and bring something that's going to bring a healthier lifestyle to young and old people. What kind of got you on that track of diving into this and creating the brand that you have?
Yeah. So I would say about 3-4 years before I started, I was actually studying to be a naturopathic doctor. And during that time, my last year in clinic, I was seeing patients, and you would provide them with this fully planned schedule of their supplement regime, but, you know, they weren't getting better. And there's this huge stigma towards people where they can't admit they have a fear of swallowing pills. I'm not sure if you like swallowing pills or not, but I guess you just can't go to a doctor and be like, hey, I can't eat this because I have a fear of swallowing pills, and that one inside. And, to help patients like that, you look at the gummy vitamin industry, because that's a perfect solution for them. But the gummy vitamins have all these sugar, artificial flavoring, coloring, all that, and gelatin and things that you don't really want to give them. You have to give it to them because there's no way. And Times.com compares those gummy vitamins to Halloween candy. So giving think of your little ones, when you want them to be healthy, giving these candies, you're actually giving them extra sugar, which they don't really need. So, and because of all these, and then you look at the ingredients in the gummy vitamins, they usually just scratch the surface of the daily intake of the nutritional values that they need. So there was a huge gap there, and we just said, okay, we need to give something to the customers or patients, provide them something where they want to take the gummy vitamin that's actually healthy, that's actually nutrition, and it doesn't have any sugar. And that's where things I guess started.
Oh, I love that. And again, you were solving a problem that you were living in. And I think that really resonates with this panel, is that a lot of the businesses, and of course, a lot of startups and entrepreneurs, a lot of what they do, it always resonates with themselves. It's a problem that they've faced. They've analyzed it. They looked at it and said, is this something I can build bigger and better? And Jared, you come in at this from a completely different angle, because you are the one that helps communicate back to the world to help share these brands and what they're doing and why they're doing it, telling their story and helping push that out. But now you've kind of fed into that, taking that learning over the last 4 or 5 years of building up your business and your communication side. Now you've launched your own product and kind of taking the learning to drive into that. Are you also taking that same tactic and looking at it and saying, you know what, I need to build a brand to fix this, because there might be a lot out there already, but here's how I'm going to cut a little slice for your new product, nut butter?
So yes and no. I'm definitely trying to build a brand around what the product is, but I'm not solving a inherent problem. I'm one of those products where I found a gap within what was in the market. So my story very much began from I'm already a pretty, not to toot my own horn, but a pretty skilled home cook. I got all the toys and gadgets. I like to fiddle with food. I like travel, like exploring, new cultures through cuisine, as does my wife. And through the pandemic, I found myself in the span of a week making a couple dishes from different parts of the world, both of which used peanut butter. And a Thai one I was making, I just kind of thought in that moment, man, I wish this had lemongrass and lime leaf and ginger, those like key Thai flavors. And something just clicked. I went, oh, that could go in peanut butter. And that kind of kicked off this whole journey of exploration to realize that there's no savory peanut butters in the Canadian market. There's only a handful in the American market. And I've talked to them, and they're amazing, amazing human beings, because they shared so much. They were so helpful. So I found a gap. But in the way I've positioned it and the way we're targeting our audience definitely speaks to the needs of those people. So we ended up being an internationally spiced nut butter versus a savory one. And that spoke very much to use case in terms of our target audience, who are mostly healthy, healthier individuals who have a healthy mindset, who are using peanut butter on a regular basis as part of their protein, or they're putting in their shakes or their oatmeal bowls. So for all of them, the health benefits and the fact that we're only made out of peanut, spice, and salt is a big deal. So everything we do for them is around that. Our other key one are those who are trying to cook a lot of foods but don't necessarily have lemongrass and lime leaf on hand, for example. I cook Thai all the time. I don't have that regularly in my cupboards or in my fridge. So having it as a hack, so I can quickly whip something together, or to take something like a hummus dish and just give it a different spin so easily. So for them, it's all about a unique new food product. So the messaging and the way we position the brand for them is all around that unique feature. And I think that's something that both Ted and Jung Yoon have done a really good job on, was in their marketing, is really targeting specifically to their target audience. And that's something that I've talked to a lot of founders about recently. I'll call it Broya, who's a bone broth, as a prime example. They've just changed some of their positioning on their packages due to shifting consumer interests and priorities when it comes to bone broth. And when they look at beef, they're more concerned about being grass-fed than organic. So organic's now dated. So something that I think a lot of newer CPG founders are maybe struggling with, or I see them doing, is trying to be everything to everyone because they're a product that fits so many different niches, or they can hit so many different of those trending diets. So your keto, your Whole30, your paleo, all these things, but are all of those really important to you? And I think that's something that we have to really fine tune and understand. who's your real audience? Are you really targeting that Whole30 consumer? Or are you targeting a healthy mindset consumer who might also just happen to be Whole30? And understanding that really results in the success that someone like Ted and all of the panelists and all the brands you're going to hear from today have really nailed down, is really getting their naming and their positioning just right to really identify with a target audience beyond just what the hot trend is. And that's why they've been so successful when that trend hits.
And that's well shared. And it kind of, it goes back into the whole community side and how you've built out that community to focus around your type of product, the type of people that are interested in your foods or in the service you offer. So it's fascinating that how you've kind of had to take that approach with your own brand, but also how you're helping communicate this to your other clients. David, when you have all of these companies coming in and you're picking through hundreds of CPG brands, how are you picking the trend or picking the companies that you think are most viable to succeed in this category when you're getting so many micro CPG brands chopping into, say, Kraft peanut butter, which was your staple tabled product for, 50 years. And now all of a sudden they're losing market share to a million smaller brands. How are you kind of working in that trend to say, all right, you guys are in, love where you're going, this is a good fit? How do you kind of shuffle through that? Because it's got to sound like it's crazy that there's so many brands in each category that are kind of coming out of nowhere. How do you decide as an organization on which ones you want to get behind?
That's a great question. And I think first it's, we all have our own personal bias. I'll have my bias. I think the great thing of what we've built is we have our selection committee, but we've also reached out to a ton of folks, say, hey, here's a couple of different brands. I know Jared's been one of them who's reviewed it for us. And that's what we try to go out into the community and say, hey, like we know some buyers or we know some distributors, and we say, look, we know this is not your day-to-day job, but for us, help us understand, is this something you would get excited behind? So we're trying to go right into the industry and ask them to help us identify folks. It plays a factor. I don't want to say it ultimately decides for us because it comes down to the founder and the way it tastes. I think one of the most difficult things throughout the pandemic is trying to taste the product. When you're trying to interview a company, you can't have the product in front of you. We have to schedule like shipping dates and things like that, or we go out and purchase them. So that's always a challenging part. But one thing that I think for us, it's looking, the trends definitely help set something up. But I think more importantly, when we're picking a company for acceleration and growth, it's not only just about how different the product is and how innovative it is, and what buyers buy. It's also for us, the huge part of it is getting behind the founder and understanding their objectives and what they're trying to achieve. For us, we always say we can only help so much if the founder's not going to drive the business and do the work day in and day out to get things done. There's nothing we can do on our end. And I think that's always the biggest thing, understanding some of those pieces and how the founders can help. But for us, it's really leaning on the community. Folks like Jared's been fantastic. I know JP has been fantastic. Sometimes we'll even go to Ju Young, who was part of our first cohort, and just say, hey, what do you think of this? Is it crazy? Is it good? Is it not? And I think perspective is really important when you're in this industry.
No, I love that. And you're right. Perspective is everything. It helps you decide where things are going to go or at least what you should be getting behind. And what I like about that, and obviously with Ju being part of your initial cohort, they're obviously doing fantastic things. When you kind of got in there, Ju, with your first grouping, you had, I think, maybe 3 or 4 products when you first started, and you've kind of expanded that portfolio. Are you following trends? Are you looking at the areas and saying, okay, this is kind of like Flo is doing with collagen, and they're saying, okay, you know what, this is coming up, this is being trendy, we should jump into this, see if we could flood the market with our great product and still fix the problem by taking out the sugars and all those great things? How did you decide when and was the right time for you to expand your product line?
Yeah. So, I mean, when you're in the industry and then when you start your product correctly and you start building a relationship with the buyers will tell you through their category and say, listen, have you ever considered this? Have you ever considered that? And then the customers also come back at you and say, hey, I really love this product. Would you consider making something for this? And then we will look at our roadmap and depending on the demand and I guess the trend, and we would actually accelerate that further. And because our product was so unique on its own, it just wasn't there then. That's why we just exploded our category. Instead of doing 4 at a time, we actually launched 8 because there were so many categories that people were looking for this for these gummies, or this option for these gummies, which didn't exist, and they wanted some solution. We said, okay, we could be that. And that's how I guess things start escalating for us.
And that's awesome. So you hit the I guess the nail or the hammer on the head, whatever that saying is. But you listened and you were part of the environment. So you're in the thick of things. You're really diving into the category you're in. You're learning it. You eat, breathe, and sleep it. So you can modify and change as the environment is working through. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, essentially. So especially with product development, doing R&D all the time, we're just making sure we're up to date with the flavors, the trends, and also the ingredients.
I love that. And Ted, I see you guys on the shelf all the time in LCBO. You have the same section, straight down 2 or 3 shelves, always stacked in there. I love it. How did you guys play in this side of things? How did you, one, expand in, but also starting to hit the flavor taste of what everybody else wasn't doing? Was that also just listening to the category managers and working with them closely? Or was this kind of you just kind of keeping on trend while creating the trend to say, hey, you know what? People love Indian Pale Ale. I'm getting into that. And we're going to build out these 3 new brands because that's the timing and we should be doing this.
Yeah, at the beginning for me, the first product we launched was an IPA, and that was more or less, it was a challenge, right? Like no one had ever made a great tasting craft non-alcoholic beer before. So I said, let's try the hardest thing we think there is to do, which was the IPA. And if we can do that, then we can do everything else. And so, that started from that perspective of let's start with the hardest and work our way backwards from that. I think subsequent to that, as we built that community and our fan base, we've really stuck to integrating them into our product development pipeline. We have a core group of super fans. They're constantly giving us ideas, and it's a large enough group now that it has statistical relevancy in terms of potential market success. So we rely on them very heavily to help inform us of what they're looking for, and if it's in alignment with our purpose. We haven't gone into specific categories that we thought, were outside of our core reason for being. But if it falls within that, it's something that like we're all into trying to launch new products. We send them out in very small batches to these super fans. We get their feedback in a structured process, and then we launch it to e-commerce. And then if that's successful for us, then we get it pushed out into retail. So it's a deliberate process, but it's very collaborative with our fans and with our community.
So you're taking a lot of input, not only from the categories and who you're working with, but you're taking more in from your fans and helping them generate and drive the value for that next product line, helping them test it, give feedback so you can always perfect it. Now, if I take that type of spin in how you're kind of moving with the trends and you're growing with your community, if I look at a Steam Whistle as an example, when they went into market, they had a different approach. They went in with, we're going to create one beer, we're going to have the best beer in the world, and it's just going to be this one crisp beer. And I think it was 20 years or 25 years before they actually went to a second product. And I'm sure their community must have been pushing them saying, come on, let's get a flavor profile here. Let's do something different. What I'm finding now in a lot of the last 5 years with CPG brands, that they're expanding quicker and faster. Their communities are driving more flavor changes in their product lines than ever before. Do you see that is a trend, or is it just shelf acquisition? What do you think is driving that? And does it cost you more time and money to do this, or does it bring a lot more value back to your business?
Yeah, I think there's, to some degree, there's a chasing of revenue and valuation in that sort of mentality. For us, we have very clear guardrails. Like we've had customers say, why don't you make a 3% beer? And we could easily do that, and we could easily market it. And we have the channels and the sales force and the technical know-how to make that happen. Is it aligned with our purpose? No. And so we have these very specific guardrails that say this is something that would fall within our purpose, and this is something that would fall outside of that. And we're very deliberate in letting that guide us in those types of decisions. So we say no to way more things than we say yes to. And I think that's a fundamental strength of our business and my team.
It's amazing. So you're really holding on to that brand value. You've created the brand, you've created how it's going to look and feel, and you're sticking to that story. Jared, how do you keep these businesses from not staggering off of all of that? How do you get them on plan and staying inside of that brand function? Because I think that's huge. And as David alluded to in the first, when he talked about this, that brand is the biggest thing that's happening right now in trends. How do you get people to communicate and stay on target? Just as Ted said, because I think that's hugely important, that they're not creating this 3% beer where they probably could eat up the market, but then people will be confused. Wait, are you a non-alcoholic beer or are you just a less alcohol beer? So I guess there's some of that confusion. How do you keep people aligned?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, and there's a real, kind of like Ted was saying, there's a real desire and a real fear of missing out if you don't jump on some of those trends. Literally this morning I was on Simrise's trend spotter rather, looking at the food and beverage flavor trends for the next year, right? And this is the type of stuff I stay on top of. And there's lots of stuff that you could easily make a new Goes or a new beer and pull one of those flavors, do an LTO, and you'd kill with it for sure. But the cost of tying up your R&D for something you're going to run once that doesn't have an extended period because it's a one-off flavor for most small brands isn't worth that cost up front. And so, I spend a little bit less time, fortunately, trying to keep brands on to their brand image and their brand identity, because they're usually working either with another agency or you run into people like the MDS team who just know it so well, they live, breathe, and die it. Where I come in more is when they start to grow and they start wanting to spend their marketing dollars. I have a lot of founders, I think I have the reputation now, people call me like, how do I spend this? Because I want to go do this in this retailer because I just got my national listing with them. And there's a lot of financial barrier to doing a lot of really big, flashy things in store in particular. And so there's a lot of helping brands understand, well, having that shelf plate and doing this giant promotion in that store is going to be costing you, not that 10,000 you think it's going to cost you, it's going to be costing you like 80 to 100,000. That's not to say you can't do something cool with this. Let's just talk about how we frame that up so it not only matches your budget, but also communicates what you need to communicate. And that's where it goes really back to understanding who your target audience is, especially if you're a really unique breakout brand. And I'll use Midday Squares as an example because they're refrigerated, right? No one's going to go by default to the fridge to look for a chocolate bar. So in that case, this is where it gets really fun for what I do, is how do we now communicate to the consumer all the great benefits of what you are, while also saying you have to find us over here. And that's a challenge in and of itself. That's really where the agency thrives, is how do we do those really unique, special communications where you're trying to drive that traffic away from that main brand. And that's why it's so important that when I start talking to brands, one of the first things we talk about is their identity. Who's your audience? How are you communicating with them? How have you done it? What have you tried? And we really dig into every single little detail we can so that we can understand what that is. So whatever campaign ideas we come up with, totally align, not just to a broad stroke target audience, but to exactly who you're trying to target, and it aligns to your brand, because your communication has to be the same whether you're interacting with that brand in store, on TikTok, on Instagram, some experiential handout display down at Union Station, wherever they come across you, that the consumer has to have that same message.
And when you're putting this message together to kind of push your brand out there and keeping to your brand standards, as we've all kind of talked to, how do you avoid the distractions? Because I'm sure there's got to be a lot of tactics that are just time consuming and distracting versus the ones that are going to help you pay off. And you can look back to some of the trends that, David mentioned on the meat side, the plant side, everything is going to this sustainable plant-based, avoiding kind of all of the things that have been used in the past. Now, when you're going into marketing and other factors, how do you avoid some of those tactics that will just be time consuming and wasting your value, or, as Ted alluded to, building something that's going to be 3% when it takes you off what you're actually focused on? So how do you kind of work your way through that? And do you have 1 or 2 points that would say, just stick to these things and this will help you move forward, or try it all?
Definitely don't try absolutely everything, because you just don't have enough time. You legitimately just don't have enough time or money, but mostly time. I just started getting on TikTok. I would never use it personally, but for the butter, of course, for Wander, of course I have to. And it takes so much time to create content on TikTok. And do I know if it's valuable for me or not yet? I don't know, but I know so many brands who've had success. I have to at least give it a try. So I think when you're looking at it from a brand standpoint, first and foremost, you have to understand who your brand is and where your target audience is and how you want to be viewed by them. That in and of itself will potentially eliminate some platforms or how much effort you put into certain platforms. From there, it's going to come down to the budgets and the amount of impact you can have on those budgets. So, Hush is a great example. I happen to love some of what they did. They took out a huge display in the hockey arenas for the playoffs. right? I have no idea what they paid, and it was a huge gamble, but it massively paid off them because their target audience was watching in terms of their buyers, right? So they had a humongous surge after that, and it was risky. It was a big risk to take, but it made sense because, of course, they looked at it from a very strategic standpoint. And I think that's the biggest thing is you can definitely, it's always worth looking into a trend, but you have to look at it very objectively about whether or not you pursue it. So, you know, for Ted, what they could do with 3%, yeah, of course, he could develop that probably very quickly. It's not, you know, rocket science time to do, but it's still going to take a lot of cost. It's going to draw things away. So the ROI just isn't going to be there for them to chase it. They'd be better pursuing, you know, taking something like the Peach Goes and trying to do a one-off, whatever the berry flavor is trending for this year. That makes more sense. Lower cost, you might want to look at that, right? So it really has to come down to, you know, the hard dollars and cents. And if a trend makes sense to pursue it, I think it makes sense, but don't do it because you just have FOMO.
No, I like that. And the FOMO is very hard not to want to jump into. It's very tough because it just draws you in and you feel like if I don't do this, I'm not going to get the success this other company or brand did if I don't join in. Just quickly, Ted, maybe you can just give us 2 things that you see trending this year in your category and 2 tactics that you think will benefit you. And if that's influencers or paid advertising, something that you think that really stands out that's going to help you guys this year that can give other entrepreneurs ideas on moving forward as well.
Yeah, we had a lot of success with our, you know, our Peach Goza. You know, Jared's, you know, probably got a fly in the wall for our development meetings, but yeah, we've got some additional fruit flavors that we're going to launch. We may also launch a hazy version of our IPA. So, you know, both sides of the spectrum in terms of what we're producing already, going a little bit more crafty and then a little bit lighter, a little bit fruitier for us. You know, what's working out there, we're getting much more into video than we've been in the past. We've been on social media for a long time. We haven't quite made the jump to TikTok yet, but I think that's an area where we're going to go. And yeah, we're really hoping to get that experiential piece back up and running. It's difficult with COVID, but, you know, getting product sampled, getting people trying the product, you know, that's number one for us, and trying to get that back up and running because, you know, once people try and taste our product, they usually end up buying it. So that's what we're looking forward to.
I love it. And I can't wait to try the hazy IPA. I'll send you my home address. You can share that along. I'll be very excited to be your test guinea pig. No problem. All the other beers are fantastic. So, and I love the taste profile that you guys have created. So brilliant. Ju, on your side, what are you seeing for trends and tactics, and which ones are standing out the most for you this year?
I think it's really right now, I think people are looking for clean ingredients, and the plant-based and sugar-free is still, I think, more demanding than ever, especially the plant-based ingredients. And now I think, you know, it's people with the growth of e-commerce, people could actually start comparing products better and better, and then your ingredients and what's inside it. So people are smarter again every year after year, and just making sure we're up to date and making sure we're using the most effective and / what customers are looking for.
And is there any tactics that you're looking at? Or are you heavy into TikTok, or are you bouncing into any other platforms or influencers that are really helping you move forward?
For us at the moment, we're not on TikTok yet, but we should. But we're actually rolling out more training programs with the stores, to making sure all the staffs know all the reason why we put all those ingredients inside like gummy vitamins.
I love it. Everybody's got their own little movement based on what they're doing. So this is brilliant. David, how about yourself? What are you guys doing on the trending side? I'm sure you're on TikTok. I know you're on TikTok. You have to be.
Funny enough, I'm not. My partner's on it and everyone's on it. And it's funny, my dosage, and she always laughs at me. Instagram has reels, and I'm like, sometimes I'll flip to that. They're like, you're on the fake TikTok. You need to get on the real one. But I would say it's like similar to what everyone's saying. Like, you know, you kind of have to follow. I think it's eventual, to your point, JP, that we'll be on TikTok. We've talked about it as a team. It's kind of crazy just see how fast and social media changes. I'm like, you know, I remember a couple of years ago, everyone needed to be on Instagram, Snapchat. I'm like, I haven't heard of Snapchat in forever. I don't even know if it still exists. So I think those type of things, I think more than just kind of, you know, your product itself, it's like the platforms you're on and how you communicate to your customers. That's going to change significantly. And testing out which one makes sense for you. So I love what Jared said about the Hush brand. I didn't know about that, but that's super smart, huge gamble, and definitely paid off for them.
I love it. And what are you seeing for trends? What do you and you can go category across all categories, but what do you see as the next big thing that entrepreneurs need to look for?
I think it's gonna be the plant-based. I hate to be the stereotypical. I think that's just what it is. I see more and more people getting used to it and trying it. It's being a little bit more open. I do think it's gonna be in the seafood side of things, though. I do think it's gonna be the plant-based type of seafoods that's gonna be really changing the game a lot. I think there's a lot of folks who started being pescatarians and wanting to do that one last switch, and that might be the last thing for them.
I love it. I love it. Jared, over to you. What's the trends and tactics this year?
Ted, I did not know you were developing that. That's really funny. I'm very much looking forward to those. So I think, in trends right now, there's a huge focus on health and wellness. So whether that's developing a product that's directly in that space or adding in a functional ingredient, both of those are going to do well. And that's really hot and trending for the foreseeable future, especially if it's around immunity or stress or sleep. Those are still the three big hot ones in the area. GI tract being the distant fourth in terms of what people are looking at. And then in terms of marketing, we're finally seeing things start to open up again, especially, well, maybe not in Alberta right now, but we're slowly getting back to things opening. Sampling is slowly starting to come back. Experiential is slowly coming back, and people are starting to shop and take their time a little bit more in store. And so they're starting to do discovery again in store. So for myself and the agency, it's very exciting because we're finally getting back to some really cool integrated campaigns where you're seeing in-store elements really driving traffic from that store to something virtual back to that in-store purchase through things like QR codes or through extended engagement with that brand through recipes or things like that, where you're really getting these omni-channel campaigns built out. So that's what I'm really looking forward to seeing more of, and it's probably going to pick up. You'll see it for the holidays for sure, but definitely 2022, it's coming back big.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you guys for joining us today. Super informative. You guys are doing great things. Keep up the amazing work. And just to round it off, I think the key takeaways here is that, build a brand, build a great brand, get people behind it, build that community, make sure that you're listening all around to the people that you're working with. If it's brand managers, account managers and buyers, all the way to your customer and your consumer. But have a purpose and stick to it, and don't fall outside the lines and muddy your brand, but stick to where you're going and envision long and make it big. So thank you again, guys, for sharing today. That was fantastic.